Welcome to Headline to Heartline. Before the big event, we need to take a deeper look at Bad Bunny, the Super Bowl, and the risks around it, because some doors open to a game and others open to a national argument. Bad Bunny, hero or villain? With the Super Bowl just days away, the debate around him is exploding, pulling in political arguments, security worries, and a deeper cultural clash. How did one halftime show become a flashpoint? And what does it reveal about the moment we're living in right now? Come with me today as we cut through the noise, get clear on what's actually new about this Super Bowl, and name the real tensions and risks building around it. Let's start with the basics, because when emotions rise, facts keep us steady. The Super Bowl is on February 8, 2026, at Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara, California, in the San Francisco Bay Area. The halftime headliner is Bad Bunny, the Puerto Rican superstar whose music is mostly in Spanish and whose public comments have sometimes touched on politics, including immigration. In a typical year, that would be a major entertainment headline and nothing more. This year, it is turned into something bigger. It's less about the set list and more about what people think the moment stands for. Reporting at the time describes a collision between celebration and backlash. On one side, many fans, especially in Latino communities, see this halftime show as visibility and pride on a stage that rarely centers their culture. They see a language and identity that are part of everyday American life being treated as central rather than sidelined. For them, the hype feels like recognition. On the other side, the backlash is not really about vocals or choreography. Critics argue the Super Bowl should be a unifying, apolitical event. Some object to a Spanish-language headliner on what they see as the most iconic American sports broadcast. Others object to Bad Bunny's past statements and the causes he has supported, especially anything that sounds like criticism of immigration enforcement. In that framing, his name becomes a symbol in a much larger argument that's been building for years. Who belongs, whose voice counts, and what American is supposed to look and sound like. Then came the Grammys, and the temperature jumped. At the Grammy Awards on February 1, 2026, Bad Bunny won for Best Musica Urbana Album, and his Spanish-language album also won Album of the Year, an historic first. During his acceptance moment, he said, "Ice out," and spoke about immigrants in a way that drew loud applause in the room and loud criticism outside it. Supporters heard compassion. Critics heard a political attack on an agency and on people who support stricter enforcement. Either way, the effect was immediate. The halftime show was no longer being discussed only as entertainment. It was being treated as a statement. That symbolism is spilling into real life. In some places, people are planning viewing parties that feel celebratory and communal. Fans are gathering, sharing outfits, playlists, and excitement, treating the week before the game like a cultural holiday. In other places, people are organizing counter-events and boycotts, arguing the league is endorsing a message they reject. One conservative group, Turning Point USA, announced an alternative all-American halftime show, and the musician Kid Rock has been associated with those counter-programming plans. This is no longer casual sports banter. It's a cultural confrontation aimed directly at a performer. So why does it feel so heated right now? Part of it is that immigration is not an abstract topic for most people. It touches family stories, jobs, safety, and identity. When an artist speaks about it, people don't receive it as a distant opinion. They hear it through their own experiences or through what they believe is happening to their country. That's why a short phrase from a stage can travel so far. And part of it is the Super Bowl itself. It remains one of the last truly shared national moments. Millions of people who disagree about almost everything still sit down for the same game, the same commercials, and the same halftime show. That makes the event feel like a mirror. Some people see inclusion, others see disruption. When a shared room starts to feel contested, the arguments grow louder. If you're finding this helpful, please like the video and subscribe. And now let's get back to it. Now let's talk about the word risk, because it can mean a few different things and we should be precise. There's the risk of misinformation and rumor. In a high-tension moment, people share claims quickly, especially online, and those claims can be wrong or exaggerated. There's the risk of backlash affecting real people, not just celebrities. When the conversation turns ugly, the target often spreads. It can turn into hostility toward Spanish speakers in general, toward immigrants in general, or anyone who seems to represent the other side. Even if someone never watches the halftime show, they may still feel the impact in the way coworkers talk, the way strangers comment, and the way social media treats them. And there's the risk that a major public event becomes harder to keep safe, not because of one performer, but because huge crowds combined with heightened emotion require extra planning. That's why the security operation around the Super Bowl is so extensive. There are wide no-drone zones, tighter screening at airports and stadium entrances, and coordinated teams from federal, state, and local agencies monitoring transit hubs, public spaces, and large fan events. For fans, that often means longer lines, multiple checkpoints, bag checks, and a more visible law enforcement presence. These measures are standard for an event of this scale, but they draw extra attention this year because protests related to immigration policy have been growing in different cities, and Bad Bunny's public comments have placed the halftime show near the center of a sensitive national conversation. Officials have also repeated that the goal is to keep the event safe and focused on the game, not to conduct immigration enforcement tied to the Super Bowl itself, a message aimed at calming fears and pushing back on rumors. At this point, it helps to step away from the temptation to label Bad Bunny as a good guy or a bad guy. He's not running for office. He's an artist who has built a career on bringing Puerto Rican and Latin identity into global pop culture, sometimes with social commentary, sometimes simply with joy and style. People can reasonably disagree about what he said at the Grammys. People can also reasonably disagree about whether the halftime show should stay completely neutral. But the larger point in the reporting is that the intensity isn't only about him, it's about the country. He becomes a focal point because he's visible, and visibility is powerful, especially in a moment when many Americans feel unheard. It's also worth saying plainly that the Super Bowl did not suddenly become political. Over the years, it has repeatedly become a stage where national debates show up through performers, ads, and public reaction. What feels different now is the speed and volume. A clip hits the internet, the story hardens into sides, and suddenly people aren't debating what happened, they're debating what it proves. So as the game approaches, listen to how people talk about it. Notice who gets treated like a person and who gets treated like a symbol. Notice how quickly a story about music becomes a story about belonging. And notice how many people, quietly, just want to enjoy the game and the show without feeling like they're stepping into a shouting match. Here's the simplest takeaway. The hype is real because the Super Bowl is huge. The controversy is real because this halftime show sits at the intersection of language, immigration, and identity, three topics Americans are struggling to talk about calmly. Bad Bunny didn't create that struggle. He walked onto a stage where the argument was already waiting. Thank you for spending this time with me. Please subscribe to the channel and like the video before you go, and I'll see you next time. And if you remember one thing from Bad Bunny, the Super Bowl, and the risks around it, let it be this. Every doorway we pass through, whether into a stadium or into a conversation, reveals what we're bringing with us.